In this video, I am reviving Alan Watts' words from his book titled Still the Mind, An Introduction to Meditation. And let me tell you, he is glad that he's been woken from his slumber to impart some age-old wisdom. And hopefully through his words, you and I can find the way of Zen and out of the way of stress. Welcome. I am Daisy, your hostess. If you are new to my channel, I'm so glad you found me. And to you, yes, you, my dear subscriber, I am delighted to have you back. Thank you again for your support, for visiting here with me, for spending time, for hitting that like button, leaving comments, and sharing different videos here on the channel. Thank you so much. In the previous video, Alan Watts glossed over the idea of what is the essential process of the world, and he took us on a word travel to explore who we are in the universe. He invited us into a brotherhood with each other by accepting that there are many ideas of God and other concepts. As for me, after reading chapter 1, I thought that for many of us it would be scary, or at least apprehensive, to think that we are at the beginning of anything, and also the concept that we are at the beginning of everything, and maybe at the beginning of nothing. It may seem like such a burden to carry. That is, if we stand here, aware of the present moment, and accepting that this moment is the origin of time. Because that's all we have, is this moment. And the more deeper questions, such as, what could possibly become of us, each individual one of us, when we choose to discover the real me? And that, I think, is an age-old question that many of us at some point of our lives have asked. Who am I? 3 words that can hold the power for self-transformation. Okay, Alan just nudged me. His words are jumping from the book. So sit back as Alan Watts comes alive in chapter 2 with Meet Your Real Self. We have started out on a journey together to the place where we are. It's good to reflect at some point along the way on the futility of a certain kind of power game we play with our energy. The futility of power games. There are 2 kinds of games: the game you play to win and the game you play to play. There is a difference between the two, in the same sense as there is a difference between traveling to get somewhere and traveling just to travel, which we might call wandering. There is a difference between motion with the objective of changing place and motion with the objective of dancing. All those forms of energy that are moving to dance or traveling to wander are joyous manifestations of energy. On the other hand, all those forms of energy that have us moving to get somewhere tend to become frantic and have a quality of urgency that moves us faster and faster until we simply can't go fast enough to accomplish the object. Even when it comes to practicing meditation, people keep asking about the fastest way, and they want to know how long it is going to take. Nishkarma means action or doing. Karma without attachment, especially without attachment to the results of action. Nishkarma is the whole point and message of the Bhagavad Gita, or Song of the Lord, which consists of the instructions of the charioteer Krishna to the warrior Arjuna about his conduct on the field of battle. With this principle, we can view not only our ordinary activities of everyday life, but also our religious activity in an entirely new way, not as something done to achieve a result. Why do it? Of course, people then ask, why do it? People are always asking why, But one must realize that why is a barren question. You expect an answer addressed in terms of motivation. You want to know the cause of what somebody is doing and the goal it leads to. If you are acting without a goal in mind, however, you can't say why you're doing it, except to do it. Yet people are still bothered and ask, why do it then? As if to say, why use energy at all? Why not just be still? But of course, that's the same as asking, why does the universe exist? Why, in other words, is there motion? The answer to that is because there is stillness. And why is there stillness? Because there is motion. In this way, you reach an end to the question why, because it just goes around in circles. Another way to reach an end to the question why is to go back into the past. Because when you do, you find explanations behind explanations, so that, in the words of a favorite semantist's verse, big explanations have little explanations upon their backs to bite them, and little explanations have lesser explanations, and so on infinitum. In other words, you can never get there. What happens, in fact, when we search the past to try to understand why we are doing what we are doing? What happens is that the track fades away. Look back as far as you may, but you will never find the beginning because the track gives out, just as the wake of a ship vanishes, or the contrail of a plane melts into the air. The past, which we consider to be the push-off point or the cause, is gone. The real reason the past doesn't work as an explanation, however, is of course very simple. The push-off, the cause, never was in the past. It has always been in the present. It is perfectly obvious that if there was a time when the universe came into being, when it did do so, it was now. And that now is still here. And it is still beginning right at this moment. So what we call the past is simply the traces, the fade-outs trailing away from the present. So there is little point in asking why you are here, because unless you think you are here to resolve some past business, in which case you have been motivated as if you were a billiard ball hit by a cue, the issue is irrelevant. Everybody is always talking about motivation and asking why. Why do it? But you can always say, why not? And although that sounds a little childish by way of an answer, there is no why. And in a way, that is rather splendid. We tend to think that things are meaningless and dreadful if we can't explain why they happen. A policeman who pulls over a motorist who wasn't going fast enough asks, where are you going? Nowhere special, comes the answer. This irritates the policeman because he thinks you must be on the road for some reason and that you ought to be going somewhere. If you're not, you are a suspect because you're probably crazy or up to no good. Desires and drives. Why do anything? Is it because of desire? When people refer to their basic desires, they call them instincts, which is simply a way to label desires as drives. We all feel driven, and yet you don't realize that the energy of a drive is you. When you habitually abstract yourself from what you are experiencing as the experiencer or the knower of the experience, you come to feel like a puppet being driven by your emotions or by your appetites or desires, whatever they are. But in fact, they do not drive you, for there is no you to be driven by them. They are you. And so this notion that leads to saying or thinking, "Excuse me, I am driven," or "Excuse me, I have to eat, I have to work, I have sexual desires." All this is rubbish. I will not apologize for what is called my hunger. I am very happy to be hungry and to eat. So instead of saying, "Excuse me, but I must eat," I eat with pleasure. Look at what a degradation of ourselves that attitude carries with it. And it all comes from this feeling of being pushed or driven by something we believe is greater than we are. The vast workings underneath. The reason we feel it is greater than ourselves is because we have a conception of ourselves as nothing more than the superficial scanning mechanism called consciousness. Of course, if that is all you are, naturally you feel driven, because you are disconnecting yourself from the vast workings that lie behind consciousness. We disown the part of ourselves that we call instinctual, animal, or primitive. We think instead that as human beings, we are the garnishing on top of the evolutionary pile. We feel we are much more evolved, not realizing that everything we have by way of consciousness and reason grows out of the primal energy that lies underneath it. Therefore, if reason grows out of the primal energy that we are, then it means that the primal energy is at least reasonable, whatever else it may be. You can tell the tree by its fruits, for by their fruits you shall know them. And so it is that figs do not grow on thistles or grapes on thorns, and stupid universe does not create people. People are a manifestation of the potentiality in the energy of the universe. And if we are intelligent, then that which we express is also intelligent. By logical extension, that in which we express it is our central self. The world is not something external. It is what is most fundamentally you. As long as we think we are motivated by something external, however, and therefore feel insufficient, as long as we have that conception of ourselves, we are playing to win, because what we want is to win more and become more. But as I pointed out, our conception or image of ourselves is only a caricature, and as such is abstract and completely inadequate. It feels as if we're insufficient in some way. If you ask, "What did you do yesterday?" the average person will consult memory and give you a very attenuated, strung-out chronicle of events, having reduced yesterday's experiences to a thin line of words. What you did yesterday becomes what you noticed yesterday, and what you noticed yesterday was a very tiny part of what happened. It was only as much as you could record in some memory code, in words or in brief impressions. If you identify yourself with the skinny little stream of life, it is no wonder that you feel unsatisfied, because you ate the fish bones instead of the fish. And since we think that is what is happening all the time, and that life is only this skinny little thing, we feel hungry for experience, for thrills, and for ecstasy. We say, there must be more coming. And we need more and more future, because the past is gone, and it was a scraggly past anyway. We have no present, because life looks like an hourglass. It has a big future and a big past, but only a tiny little neck of a present that everything is squeezed through. In Buddhist symbology, the idea behind the hourglass is represented as a kind of being called a preta. A preta is thought of as a hungry spirit, and these creatures are represented as having enormous bellies, but mouths and throats only about the diameter of a needle, so they can never get enough. That tiny mouth and immense belly represents the neck of the hourglass and the feeling of having no present. In fact, our present is enormously rich. And you will realize this if you understand that there is no time except present time. There's only now. There never was any time but now. There is no hurry to gobble life down, and if you do, you won't be able to digest it. We can go on much longer than we suppose without eating. So it's all right to just sit and be in the present. But if you identify with the linear conception of yourself, with your story, and with the abstract ego, you feel inadequate, and therefore it becomes necessary to try to make up for that inadequacy by using energy to attain more in all sorts of ways. Wanting more control. We want more control over what happens, and this leads us through a progression of steps. We start off, of course, by attempting to acquire power in a physical way, through the possession of material wealth, historically of cattle, of slaves, of land, of crops. Then, to retain all that and keep command over people's minds, we construct societies to dole out this material wealth. But as everybody who has ever had this kind of wealth knows, it doesn't stop the feeling of inner frustration. We notice that when wealth has been in a family for a few generations, the descendants of the original robber baron become spiritual, and they go into the arts and into religion because they still feel unsatisfied. Of course, many people who have never been through the phase of having material wealth have nonetheless understood that it is a blind alley and gone into the arts or religion right away. The first phase of religion, simple magic. Religion in its first phase, however, is what we call simple magic, and it's typified by the attempt to control the world not by the violence of arms and muscular strength, but by hypnotizing it and enchanting it. Women sometimes control men by enchanting them, and men try to control women by a similar process, and throughout history, religion has been an attempt to enchant the universe, to enchant the gods by offering sacrifices and through religious dances and rituals. Thus, religion becomes magical religion. People ask a person who goes to church, particularly if they go to a church where they practice magic, "Why do you do that? Why do you have to do those rituals?" The answer inevitably is, in one way or another, we perform these rites because we believe they are pleasing to God, and we have been ordered to do these things. This is the way it has been revealed that we should worship, and therefore we do it, hoping, of course, that God will bless us with long life, health and wealth, and sons and daughters. In this sense, all of this is still being done out of a feeling of inadequacy. The moral phase of religion. A more sophisticated phase of religion comes into play when the prophet finally says, "Your burnt offerings are an offense to me. Your feast days and your rites are all foolish. What I require is justice and mercy towards other people." Then religion passes from a magical phase into a moral phase in which the emphasis is placed on living and loving, the building up of human solidarity and community. At this level, the teacher of religion becomes primarily the prophetic teacher of morals, but unfortunately, you cannot love out of aridity. If you have an arid identity, you have no love to give. If you conceive yourself to be this cut-off plant that we call the conscious ego, you have no roots into a rich and luscious soil, and so all you have to give is just a little surface energy. You have no deep and abiding love. As a result, the moral preachings are given to people who are perfectly incapable of observing them. The preachers will tell you how you ought to behave, specifically what you should do and what you should not do, but they never tell you how to become the kind of person who can do those things. And so all they succeed in is making matters worse by making you feel guilty and inadequate. You know you should do what they say, but you can't figure out for the life of you how to do it, and so you feel guilty. A person who feels guilty feels more deprived than ever, and so has to resort to all sorts of measures to assuage their sense of guilt. Naturally, this does not work. And then we begin to see that religion must involve more than moral precepts. Grace, the transforming power of the divine. Religion must be a way of putting us in touch with what the Christians call grace. That is to say, the transforming power of the divine. Of course, they usually turn this around and say you will receive grace through magic. And so they practice the magic ceremonies of baptism and Holy Communion. It is thought that if you participate in these ceremonies in the proper way, the magical power of God will come through and will change you. But it somehow does not seem to do so. In that situation, the Buddhists and Hindus might say that the magic failed because it was not performed properly, because you were in the wrong frame of mind. Jesus essentially said the same thing. If you will have faith, it will work. But somehow you have to find faith. And how do you find faith when you don't have it? If you ask that question of the preachers and the priests, they don't know how to answer. They may write very clever books to persuade you that God really does exist and that it is quite scientific to believe in God, but they cannot instill faith. The more cleverly you reason it out, the more all this implies doubt. And the very need to resort to clever reasoning assures us there's no genuine expression of faith. The practice of meditation. On this level of religion, you find the quest to transform consciousness through the practice of meditation. One may have heard that by fasting or by concentrating on breathing, there is a way of opening oneself up to higher energies. One may believe that as these energies course through you, they produce a magical power, and so therefore we learn what is essentially self-hypnosis, and it can do some very startling things. However, we soon come back to the same problem we found with the geneticists, who can also do some very startling things. As all skilled technologists know, the question is, what are you going to do with it? Do you know what to do when you acquire power through meditation? How are you going to use it? And the question still is, who are you? Who is going to decide how to use it? Who is getting this power? Of course, at the back of your mind, you still have the attenuated and impoverished conception of you and the feeling of chronic tension that holds on tight and is the basis for the feeling of I, of ego. There are teachers of sensory awareness who can show you how to relieve that chronic tension so you can relax and let go of the experience of being an ego for a while. That is very nice, of course, but soon afterward you replace, once again, into that tension. As long as you believe that you are your image of yourself and that you can govern your thoughts and your feelings, you will relapse into the habit of making muscular tensions to control yourself, and you will experience the ego illusion all over again. Then you may feel guilty because you are not relaxing, and the minute you feel guilty, you can be certain that the ego is operating very well, although this guilty feeling means it feels injured. The ego's pride has been hurt, and no amount of guilt will get rid of that underlying problem. At this point, you may begin to realize that the meditation exercises are still a form of magic done to aggrandize yourself, and that like preachers and teachers who inculcate a sense of guilt, you are simply trying to quench thirst with salt water. The problem is that the self-improvement approach is based on an experience of yourself that is completely inadequate. So long as you are the thinker separate from the experience of thoughts, the feeler separate from the experience of feelings, or the experiencer separate from the experience, you will feel strangled like the neck of the hungry spirit, the neck of the hourglass. In trying to make improvements, that is the way you've defined yourself, and therefore you will not be able to use energy joyously because you will be using it with an ulterior motive. In approaching the problem, you have defined yourself as a motivated and driven being, as a puppet. When this illusion dissolves, however, you will discover something very strange. That meditation and religious and spiritual exercises of any kind are not necessary. And people always ask if it is necessary to learn yoga breathing, or to practice Tai Chi, or to be psychoanalyzed. And I always ask, necessary for what? Where are you going? What do you want? Yes, if you want to get to New York, it may be necessary to take the freeway. But where are you going? And what do you mean by necessary? Is it necessary for becoming a Buddha? Does anybody want to be a Buddha? Do you know what it means to be a Buddha? How do you know you want to be a Buddha if you don't know what a Buddha is? People think it would be nice to have peace of mind, to be serene, to be calm, to be undisturbed by this, that, and the other. But as long as you make all those things objects of desire, you have defined yourself as lacking them, and a person who is looking for peace is obviously in turmoil. The person who is looking to end conflict is in conflict. And so the more you strive to stop the interior commotion, the more you are stirring it up. You are trying to smooth the waters with an iron, and it will never work. Why do you meditate? Invariably at this point, the big question arises. If you are going to tell us that meditation is not necessary, and that it is all here and now, then why do you meditate? Why do you practice religion, perform rituals, or chant? Why do you even talk about it? My answer is that there is no good reason for it whatsoever. This is all a form of joyous energy, and to play with it is a form of dance. It is a great thing to do, and there are all kinds of great things to do, and we are free to explore according to our own tastes. You can make any human activity into meditation simply by being completely with it and doing it just to do it. If you really enjoy swimming, you swim not to get to the other side of a river, or to complete a certain number of laps, or to go so far out into the ocean, or to compete in any way with yourself or with other people. You swim to experience the water rippling past you and to enjoy the floating sensation when you lie on your back and look at the blue sky and the birds circling about. Every moment of it, you are simply absorbed in this ripply, luminous world, looking at the patterns and the shifting net of sunlight underneath, and the sand way down below. That's what swimming is about. Some of us like swimming, and in the same way, some of us like religion and meditation. A magnificent art form. We have gone through all the levels of religion until we arrive at the religion of non-religion, where we can see that it was all here anyway, and there was nothing that had to be done. In the same spirit, we can then go back through the rest of life and turn it into an art form. And it is a magnificent art form. But if you ask me why you should choose that expression rather than some other, I won't have an answer for you, except to say that getting together and meditating or chanting is what a lot of people did before they had television to absorb them. In the jungles and on the terraces in mountain communities, for as long as anyone can remember, people have gotten together to do a thing I call digging sound. Some people still play with this sonic energy of the universe. In just the same way I just described somebody playing with the water while swimming. When these people do this, they don't worry about where they're going or what their destiny is or any such nonsense. Instead, they are completely alive. A vast celebration. To better understand all that I am trying to say, I would like to ask if you would, for the moment, change your basic notions of economics. And by this I mean the economics of energy. We are always scrimping and saving because our economic models are based on scarcity rather than exuberance. But notice that the economics of nature are allegedly wasteful by our standards, and they are based on exuberance. Many more seeds than are necessary for trees and many more spermatozoa than are necessary for people are produced. And there are many more stars than anybody could conceivably want, with galaxies galore. Nature is a vast celebration of energy. If you complain about this and say, "Oh dear me, it's all going to run out," that only means you are still looking for fulfillment in the future. Essentially, you are saying, if there's not enough future, we won't get the golden reward we're looking forward to at the end of the line. At the heart of our economic model is a view of time that is strung out on a line. But in the natural world, everything happens in cycles, which is to say, in circles. Life moves through the cycles of birth, growth, flowering, and bearing fruit, which in turn casts the seed that begins life. The flowering is our symbol for the exuberance of life, and the fruits, the enjoyment of its abundance. In religious art, the golden flower represents fulfillment. And when a human being tries to symbolize what it is that they really want at the end of the line, very often they think of a flower. It is there, in the celestial rose, in Dante's vision of paradise, and in the golden lotus of Mahavaryokana, the great sun Buddha at the center of the mandala. There are rose windows in cathedrals, and always that flower at the end of the line. Freud says of the flower that it is where everybody wants to go. And being Freud, he says it is going back to the womb. What is so attractive about the womb? To explain the religious imagery of the flower by analogy with sex is only to add another puzzle. What is so great about sex? What's so great about going back to the womb? There we are regressed to the place that psychologists don't really like to talk about. And they may say that in the womb, the baby feels omnipotent. But this is, of course, a fantasy. We have assumed the Darwinian struggle for existence as our personality, and say of the exuberance of flowers and the abundance of fruit that they flourish only to ensure survival. But this is truly an impoverished view of life, a secular view in which the person in the world is divorced from the womb. In the womb, the baby floats, and the floating baby does not know the difference between what is inside its skin and what is outside. It has what Freud calls the oceanic feeling, and this is just another form of cosmic consciousness. Only the baby does not have the language to express it like an adult. Yet there it is, drifting in the cosmic ocean. And in a way, that is what everybody wants, because that is our original nature. Oscar Wilde described the womb flower of existence as the flowers in which the gold bees dream. Yet that golden flower isn't at the end of the line. You are living in it. The radiating petals, the mandala, the great circle of the flower is the galaxy in which you live. And it is the whole universe radiating around you. Of course, this radiance is also in a cycle, and that cycling is the dance you are intimately involved in. If you can only realize that the purpose of life is not in the future. Of course, you think it is in the future. You will go on and on looking for it there and never find it. The future fades away in the same way the past fades out. You get older and older, and the future never comes, and you just peter out. It was never there, and you may feel vaguely cheated about the whole thing. You thought that there was something coming, that there was some great thing at the end of the line, the golden reward. And you have been sitting in the middle of that golden reward all the time. Now, all this should be very easy to understand unless you take a masochistic view and you feel that if you do not suffer, the experience is not real. Everybody seems to be looking for new ways of suffering, as if there weren't enough in life anyway, and trying to get in touch with their authentic existence. But in fact, whether you're in touch with your authentic existence or not, you can't lose it. So there is no need to worry about losing the feeling of it. No need to say, I know it's there because I've seen it once, but I'm afraid I will lose the feeling of it. Just forget about it. When you are trying to feel it, as if you couldn't, that is pushing it away. You can't get rid of your real self any more than you can get rid of it now. It is you. It's your being, to be more accurate. Your being is not your being. You are the being. It doesn't matter if you live or die. It doesn't make the slightest difference. It is nothing as much as it is something, and nothing and something are simply the alternations and the vibration of energy. What does it feel like at this moment? How are you feeling now? Just feel yourself. What does it feel like just to be here now? Just feel the feeling. And can you feel, in addition to this feeling, someone feeling it? Or is that the same as the feeling? Some of you may have what you would call negative feelings, depression, anxiety, and you may feel tension in the chest, a funny feeling in the stomach, or pressure in the head. Or if you are sick in a chronic way, you may feel trouble from the center where the sickness is located. But at this moment, don't name that feeling. Just explore it. It is there, whatever it is. Now you may want to change that feeling, but suppose you can't. For a while you may be able to think about something else, but now let's say to ourselves, I feel the way I feel, and I can't really do much about it. As we have seen, that is because the I that is supposed to be separate from and controlling the feeling is only imaginary. Inner and outer worlds. So if that is the case, then what you are is the totality of this present experience. The inner feelings, the discomfort and rumblings and pulsations inside your organism, together with your outer feelings, because actually your outer sensations are happening inside your brain. What you see out in front of you is the state of your optical nerves, which are inside your head. What you hear is the state of your auditory nerves, which are inside your head. So inner and outer are really so mixed up with each other that there is no difference. The skin is the bridge between the world inside the skin and the world outside the skin. But there would be no external world if there weren't an internal one, and vice versa. Your internal world is my external world, and my internal world is your external world. It all goes together in a great mixed sensory field where everything is essential to everything else, like backs to fronts and fronts to backs. So here it is, and you can feel everything happening. Your breath is going along, your ears are working, the people across from you are moving, the trees and buildings are coloring and shaping. It is all that kind of a happening. Now we can equally well define this happening as you're doing. This whole happening that is going on, that is you. If there is a you, a self, in any sense whatever. So if you try to change it, you are differentiating yourself from it. You are standing away from it, and in that moment, you split the unity. But don't worry if you find yourself habitually standing away from it. Simply treat that as part of the happening. If you can't stop standing away from it, objectifying it, as it were, that is also part of the happening, and it is going on. If there are some things you can't accept and you're fighting them, that fighting is part of the happening too. So don't try to interfere with it, just let be whatever is. There is no hurry and no place else to be. I suppose you can go away if you want to, if you are nervous and want to do something else. But has it occurred to you that there may be really nowhere to go? Because you take yourself with you if you go somewhere else. And if you have a problem here, you will have a problem somewhere else. Because you are the problem. So there's no hurry. And in a way, there is no future. It is all here. So take it easy. Take your time and get acquainted with it. Watch quietly. Just watch quietly this going on. Whether you close your eyes or keep them open makes little difference. You find yourself once again tending to put names, words, descriptions on everything that you experience, and that's not necessary. Don't try to stop yourself putting names on things. Just regard your doing that as an activity that is happening, like the sound of a car going by. If you ask, why am I doing this? Just hear the sound. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? as da 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 da. When you feel those outside sounds and activities and motions, they may seem strange because they are no longer under your voluntary control, but neither are your belly rumbles or the mechanisms of your optical nervous system. None of this is under your control, but it is all definitely you. The idea that you control something really isn't under your control either, because when we move our fingers, we're using energy, but we don't control that energy. Our thoughts are just energy too. It is all bubbling up in us, and we don't know why. In the same way, all the happenings that are by social definition outside your skin, not under your voluntary control, and so not you, are just as much you as the belly rumbles and the energy bubbling up inside you. This whole experience is you going along, and if you try to control it, you will again begin all sorts of absurd straining, like trying to lift an airplane off the ground by pulling at your seatbelt. So just let all this that you are feeling happen, because in fact, there's nothing else you can do. There's no choice. It is going to happen anyway. Your full body, your real self. Now, in this state, it is your full body that you are experiencing, the whole body of your experience. In the Far East, the Buddhists say that our full body, our real body, is composed of a trinity of 3 bodies. Nirmanakaya is the functioning body, the physical body with which we usually identify. Sambhogakaya is the body of our mental and emotional activity, and it is our capacity to enjoy, for it is the energy of eternal delight. Dharmakaya is our ultimate body, our real body, which consists of nothing less than the whole quantum field of the universe. For in truth, we are one with all that is. Feel it? It is happening. Your wandering thoughts are just happening. The buzz in the head is just happening. There you are. It is not being pushed around by anything. It is the big happening, and that means it's free. It isn't happening to you. It is you happening, and that's the difference. Meet your real self. End of chapter. Let's head over to the next video. We'll continue now with part 2, the essential process of meditation. Meet you there. Please do hit that like button. If you find this worthy to share with your friends, please do so.